Good evening and welcome to Home Fronts here on CFRC 91.9 FM. Tonight, the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario chooses a new leader. Well, they did that a while ago, but we're just getting onto it now. The Kingston Anti-Apartheid Coalition gets ready for action, and Steve Cutway will be interviewing Walter Stewart about his new book called True Blue, which presents an interesting and new view about the United Empire Loyalists. And of course, Ryland Coyne will be in at the top of the hour with his look at sports. Last weekend in Toronto, the Progressive Conservative Party chose Larry Grossman as their new leader. Bob Pickard is a Queen's student who attended the convention, and I talked with him this afternoon about the convention and the Progressive Conservative Party's future in general. I'm here with Bob Pickard, Queen's delegate to last weekend's PC Leadership Convention and co-chairman of Larry Grossman's youth campaign for the leadership. Welcome to CFRC, Bob.
Thanks very much. I'm glad to be here.
First question is, what exactly does a youth co-chairman do?
Quite a bit. I know he doesn't go to many classes, doesn't write many essays, but what he does do is organize a province-wide campaign of electing delegates, of putting together a separate youth campaign for the leadership candidate. You know, out of the 1,700 delegates at the convention, 370 were young people. They were from campuses and from every riding of the province. So it was my job to make sure that as many of these 370 as possible were supporting Larry Grossman. And as it turned out, about 175 did in the first ballot.
Now, youth delegates work in the same way as standard delegates, do they? They're just as important, or?
They're just as important. They have the same vote. You know, their vote equals the same as a senior vote. But I suppose in one sense they're more significant in that most of the energy and enthusiasm at the convention, you know, for the seat rushes, for all the hoopla, for the demonstrations, that comes from young people. They're more wound up and they have more energy to contribute.
Mm-hmm. Now, Larry Grossman's campaign was successful amongst the youth, as you said. How many, there's 3 delegates total came from Queens?
3 delegates, that's right.
How many, including yourself, were with Grossman?
Myself and Kevin O'Grady, 2 out of the 3, and Stephen Collinson was supporting Dennis Timbrell.
Uh-huh. That's, it was very close in the end. How did you guys feel about the youth? Were you running back and forth madly trying to switch Pope's people over to you or Timbrell's people over to you? How does it work when you're down there on the floor running around? What exactly is going on? I mean, all I see and all everyone else sees on TV is all these signs bobbing up and down. What exactly is going on the floor?
Well, there's a lot of talking, but it doesn't, the chaos you see on TV doesn't really reflect the way it is. Because after that first ballot, when Alan Pope dropped out, we made sure that we talked to their delegates, but it wasn't sort of haphazard. It wasn't 100 people, you know, dumping on all of these delegates at once. Before that first ballot even occurred, we made sure that we knew those Pope delegates inside out. We made sure that in our camp, we paired one of our people with the Pope delegates, so that in effect we had a buddy system where when Pope went down, Grossman supporter X would talk to Pope delegate Y. And, you know, our approach was very sensitive. These people had worked long and hard for Pope. And when he left the ballot, a lot of them were in tears, and a lot of them weren't ready for a hard sell. So we sat down with them and said, you know, we're sorry that Alan's dropped out. He ran a good campaign. But now let's think about unity and let's think about winning, and hope we think about going to Larry Grossman. So we dealt with them in a very low-key way, and we had a best person strategy for each of them. Mm-hmm. It wasn't chaos. It was very organized.
Yeah. Well, another impression I got from the TV coverage was a lot of these people talking about something called the Big Blue Machine, mm-hmm. and how it was behind Larry Grossman. And I know where I come from, at least, the Big Blue Machine is the whole Conservative Party. I mean, what really is this Big Blue Machine?
Well, where you came from, it's that way, and I think throughout the party it's that way. You know, the Big Blue Machine was sort of a term that was dubbed by, I think, more in the Timbrell campaign than anyone else. And they tried to make the leadership contest a fight between a perceived group in power and the grassroots. So it served the campaign purposes of the Timbrell people to identify fine, hard-working people like Norm Atkins and Hugh Segal as the Big Blue Machine. They tried to organize an impression where it was the few controlling the party of the many, sort of a masses versus the elite type of thing. And that had some currency because, frankly, a lot of people in the past haven't had a real say in what's happened in the party. They haven't been participating fully, and they haven't had a chance to be consulted. And even though these so-called big blue machine people were supporting Grossman, the candidate himself, Grossman, has a real commitment to making sure that everyone, in particular young people, are listened to and have a real say in what direction the party takes.
And near the close of the campaign, the convention, whatever, unity was a main theme, and it's
Sure.
obvious that you've been through this. I guess this is the second Ontario Progressive Conservative leadership campaign I've covered, and this is only in the space of a few months. I mean, what sort of effect does that have on a party, switching leaders so often, suddenly? I mean, you've 3 in the last so many months, you know.
Well, I guess in a lot of ways the effect isn't too healthy. One could pretty safely say, I think, that between the first convention and the second, there was a healthy degree of chaos in the party. And this second convention was a chance for us to try to organize something out of that chaos. You know, when Frank left the leadership of the party after the unfortunate May 2nd defeat, a lot of different ambitions and a lot of different interests wanted to take control of the party. And because a lot of the egos from last January's convention were still intact and a lot of the passions were still inflamed, it wasn't a tame experience at all. There was a lot of healthy competition, and at times it became so exuberant that it looked as if the party didn't really lose the last election. In one positive way, I guess, all of the competition that came out of that first leadership contest showed that the party was alive, showed that there was a high degree of energy. And, you know, the close result on the weekend, you know, the 19-vote victory by Grossman, shows that the party's spirit of competition is far from dead, shows that there was a lot of excitement, a lot of intrigue in what was going on.
What do you think is going to be job number 1 for Mr. Grossman now that he's the new leader?
Well, job 1 is unity, bringing all the people together from the other leadership campaigns. And I guess making sure that the groups in the party that haven't felt as if they've had a role to play have a role to play. Grossman doesn't just talk about unity and doesn't just talk about reaching out and involving people. You know, he does it as a minister in 4 big portfolios, and as House Leader in opposition. He made sure that the people who were dealing with him were widely consulted and broadly involved in what was going on, and he's going to do it.
What do you think the importance was of Alan Pope's campaign? Do you think that served a constructive role in the convention, or do you think it would have been better if there wasn't a third candidate and just left it for Timbrell and Grossman to go at it on one ballot?
Well, let me say, first of all, I was disappointed that there weren't more than just the 3 candidates. Though I've supported Mr. Grossman for some time, there are a lot of other talented people who would have really added to the leadership competition. But as for Pope, I think that he made a really good contribution to the race. He was a fresh voice, kind of a new choice for the party, a bit of a maverick, wasn't afraid to talk about tough issues. And I think that the difference that he represented was very, very exciting for the party. You know, I remember watching on TV from the Grossman trailer at the convention center, Pope giving a speech from the convention floor. You know, he didn't go up to the podium like all the rest. He gave the speech from among the people on the floor. And that difference in approach is symbolic of his candidacy, which I think gave a lot to the race.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned a lot of the youth members of the Progressive Conservative Party are from university campuses and stuff. What were the main issues that were concerning you as the youth that might be, say, different from the overall issues? Do you have any special concerns?
Well, I do, and I wish they'd be addressed more in a leadership campaign. Number 1 for me is post-secondary education. You know, last year we got the results of the Bovey report, and nothing's happened. We're still in a state of limbo. We don't know where the future is right now. And by standing still now, in effect, we're going backwards in a way because as time goes by, there's a high degree of uncertainty that weighs heavily. So that's one issue, post-secondary education. Increased funding, which I think should be a priority, wasn't in the leadership race, and I hope it is in the future. And number 2 has got to be the environment. You know, we've heard stories about the great blob in the St. Clair River, which I suppose is only humorous because it reminds us of a bad movie. But it's really kind of a bad nightmare, which I think the provincial government should address more fully. And again, this issue was not addressed enough during the leadership campaign. I know, though, that Grossman will, on the 2 issues I've mentioned, come out with some very new things to say very shortly.
Mm-hmm. So how soon do you think the next provincial election is going to be? When do you think Larry Grossman's going to get a chance to test himself at the polls?
I think we're looking at early 1986. You know, the chatter on Queen's Park says that the Liberals are going to be in power for one full session of the legislature. They want to show that they're the government. They want to show that they can make decisions. Though I don't think they've made many tough decisions yet, I think they'll try to make a couple before the end of the session and try to show a certain leadership ability. And when they've had that chance, I think they'll pull the plug, and I think that means spring of 1986. They'll also consider the $4 million debt in the Tory party that Grossman's going to try to get rid of. If they see him getting rid of it quickly, and I think he's going to do that, they might be compelled to call the election more quickly. We'll see.
That raises an interesting issue about the debt. I imagine that throwing 2 leadership campaigns in the space of less than a year is quite expensive on a party's financial well-being as well as its mental well-being.
Yeah, it put us through a lot of stress, both in terms of money and in terms of the people who have been involved in years. But in the same way that we didn't get any new money from it, we got a lot of new members from it. A leadership contest draws a lot of new talent from the grassroots of the party. And at Queen's, for example, I know of at least 20, 25 people who got involved for the first time because of this leadership contest. And though we might have lost some money because of these contests, we gained an awful lot of new ideas and new talent.
All right, well, congratulations, and thank you for coming out.
Thanks very much.